Jesus never called us to be comfortable. In fact, that's probably the number one reason why people are going to hell today. And I want to make sure that you don't go to. In this video, I'm going to talk about the really differences between being comfortable and our calling and the way that we can work really hard to be diligent, and even just some stories around how I had to learn this the hard way so that you don't have to learn it. See, I grew up in the church, and my dad was actually a senior pastor at a mega church down in San Diego. And I pursued ministry myself. I became a pastor, and then I got married, and my wife and I actually went to the mission field a little bit. And then we came back, and I'm like, what do I do now? And I remember the transition in my heart and mind. It was a big difference because I was pursuing just ministry and the call to ministry and never expected to actually make anything at all. I was just like survival mode. What could I get by with? How can I leverage little things here and there? But that was not my focus at all, to make money. And then I started having kids, and I started realizing the priority of like, hey, I need to provide really well for my family and set that up. And so I ended up starting different businesses after this. I had a marketing agency that I ran for 9 years. I did a lot of that with ministry. And then I sold that company. I got into sales. It was one skill I needed to learn instead of all the other skills and things that I needed to continue to learn and grow in as being a business owner. It was just a little more simple, and I made really good money doing that. And I did really good because I cared for people. Who would have thought? And I just try to really serve people and do people really well with that. And then I started training people because I started doing really well at that. And then I managed sales teams where we're doing millions a month. And so now I've been able to coach people. So after doing ministry and then doing marketing, doing sales, I coach business owners how to scale to 6 and 7 figures just because they need to know how to generate a business online. And so that's what I've helped many people with. Some of the unique experiences that I've had is that I see so many business owners and so many businesses have this perspective about wealth and growth and greed that kind of is the way that the world focuses on everything, which was, the perspective of like all the possessions and leaning toward comfort. And I've gotten in instances and seasons where it was hard for me to pursue any sort of discomfort. It was all about comfort. I wanted comfort food. I wanted a comfortable life. I wanted the possessions that made me comfortable. I wanted the vacations and all those different things that made me more comfortable and more selfish, realistically. And there is some topics I want to talk about here that I had to change in my mindset, my focus, and my heart in alignment with God and the way that He views and sees how we should actually pursue life in His holiness and toward His kingdom. And the comfort that we really need to actually pursue is not the best solution. So the number one topic I want to talk about in this is that comfort is a trap. And that could be actually your death wish when you think about it. Matthew 7:13 says, entering through the narrow gate. Enter through the narrow gate, He says, for the gate is wide and the road is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who go through it. How narrow is the gate and difficult the road that leads to life, and a few that find it. Friends, I want you to find that. I want you to find that narrow road. I know for me, as I'm raising 3 kids, I know I'm constantly pointing them, saying, hey, life is hard. Life is not easy. And for you to pursue your comfort and be lazy or hit your brother or not doing the chores you need to do, it's like you need to step up and do those hard things, because that is how life should be. Doing hard things is not easy. If you looked at everything in life, all the great things that are worthwhile to pursue are hard, right? And all the easy things that aren't good for you are the easiest things, right? Like fast food. How healthy is that for you, right? The hard thing is to meal prep, and prepare for meals and healthy stuff, to eat well, to get a physique that you want, to get, strong and 6-pack abs, and, to have a physique is it takes hard, diligent, consistent work to do that, right? To be like Jesus is not easy. To learn scripture, to help and serve and be mentally and aware of other people is not easy. It's almost the opposite of comfort. Now, I want to give this caveat. God's given us this world as a pleasure to consume, to eat, to enjoy, to experience life to the fullest, but it shouldn't be our destination in our whole life. And so I just want to, give that caveat is like to enjoy your life, not to say I have to do all the hard things and be discomforted all the time. Enjoy life to the fullest. But the parallels is be thinking through that your comforts could lead you to hell. It's the narrow road that leads to life. It's not the broad one. So beware of your greed, beware of the mental and heart checks that you need to have, because our internal wiring that we have is actually to lean toward comfort, is leaning toward the easy things, all the shortcuts of life. And that is not the best pursuit of your energy, time, and effort. Even in Proverbs 21:17, it says, the one who loves pleasure will become poor, and whoever loves wine and oil will not get rich. So I think of it as like if a lot of the vices that we have in life are ones that are leaning toward pleasure, which doesn't help you become wealthy, doesn't help you be disciplined, it doesn't have the right mind and heart, because if you're drunk, it's going to be hard to be able to do that. If you're pursuing all these lotions and oils and other things, and if we bucket it in such a way, those could be like all the things that are quote unquote healthy for you, or pursuit of other things that are more of luxuries in your life. It's not going to help you become wealthy by any means, because all the extra expenses that you have with the pursuit of all that, right? Lean to the hard things. Uncomfortable things aren't always the best suitable things for you. Point 2, your skills and passions are actually God's gifts to you. Do you realize that? You think about, Jesus himself, and this is, not something that it says stately in the Bible, but I think you can gather it from it, is that Jesus worked as a carpenter, right? And so he had to provide for his family, especially because his earthly father, Joseph, actually died pretty early on in age. And so Jesus was being the older brother, and he had other siblings that Mary and Joseph had after Jesus as well. But what Jesus set an example is he worked hard. He was in obscurity for most of his life up until his 30s. I mean, he had his business in carpentry, and then he had his other brothers that ended up becoming leaders in the church. And some of the facets that we can gather from Jesus's half brothers is that, Jesus was, for one, very proficient in the scriptures. He knew it inside and out. So that when I think about this, is he had to know the scriptures. That means he had to study it. He had to learn it and memorize it. And so any time that he wasn't pursuing his craft with, doing his business that he ran and trying to provide for the family because his earthly father had passed, like he was that sole breadwinner for all of the other family members. And his siblings that he had, they also were leaders in the church. They also knew the scriptures very well, because being around Jesus, as you can imagine, that's the key aspect. And the other aspect that I think is really interesting is his prayer life. How much time did Jesus himself spend in prayer? There's a saying from one of the brothers of Jesus, half brother of Jesus. His name was James, and James was known as his camel knees. That's what they called him, not because he was kneeling and begging, but because he had a really amazing prayer life. Isn't that something to be known for? Maybe his knees were so callous that it was because he prayed so often. Where did he get that from? He definitely had that example from Jesus. Okay? He worked hard. Jesus had a business. His brothers knew how to make money and survive. He also was leader and communicated well, was able to persuade well enough to sell his service, to market his service. And his brothers knew how to do that and led the church even after that. I think there's some qualities and characteristics of a really healthy business owner here. So what kind of skills do you have? What kind of passions and things and experiences that you have that you're passionate about and excited about that you can really help do this? I want to look and examine your life as well and try to think about some of this. And I try to examine this often in myself, of trying to lead my family well. What does that look like? What am I pointing, my family to? And so we're constantly trying to think, okay, how can we lead our family well? Me and my wife talk about this, and I try to always think about this. I'm not always the best of it by any means, okay? So give me grace if you ever meet me or know me and my family, but I want to pour into my family and be with my wife and kids as best I can to do that. Are you leading at church? I serve at our church, and we don't do much, but we serve in any way we possibly can. And my kids see that there. I get them involved with, greeting and serving in any way that we can. How are we doing that within our community? We host a community group at our church, at our house too. We're hospitable, and so I want to be able to figure out how can you use your skills and gifts. And some of those ways to do this is by just serving others, it's all you can, right? Jesus came to serve, how can you be serving in your community, in your family, in your church? I think those are good things. And the way you can do that is having a perspective in eyesight of who needs what. I was talking to one of our security guards at our church and our school, and I was talking about how he had to train to have this perspective of forward planning and backward, or forward planning or backwards planning that whole saying. And really what I wanted you to think about is the perspective of viewing of everything. Pastors have ability to see and sort through who's needing what, perspective of, what their needs are. I carry around a pen quite a bit because oftentimes people need help with pens. It's like you could see someone ruffling in their bag. They're looking for something. Or like, hey, are you looking for a pen? Like seeing those needs ahead of time. The security guards had that. Seeing forward where it's like, hey, what could happen? Or in instances, if something goes sideways, what do we need to know? And how do we should operate and think about? I think thinking that through the lens of, hey, how can I serve people instead of being internal of like, what can I consume? But how can you lead? How can you serve others? I think is going to be a really good perspective about all of this. Think about this. One last part, and then we'll jump to the next one here, is the business that you can create can serve others, okay? It can create, a marketplace within your community of doing that. You can create jobs instead of just having a job. You can create opportunity if you're a business, you're working in the business. You can be thinking, how can I be more profitable within my job? If you have a business, you definitely need to be thinking, how can I be more profitable in my business so that I can continue to grow and expand and, have extra money for not only your personal stuff, but also to give to the church and ministry and other opportunities. I want you to be thinking about those steps and opportunities around that. So create skills, create jobs with those skills and passions that you have, that God has given you. Your skills and passions are God's gifts to you. So take full advantage of those things in your life. Number 3 is work is your gift. Okay. Work is a gift. Okay. Work is a gift. This is what I mean by it. Is God's first thing that he told Adam was go and name the animals and tend to the garden, right? God has given us within us the desire to work, and it's a gift. And so I want you to have a perspective around viewing as a gift instead of it being a hindrance for what you want to do in your pleasure and comfortable positioning of being in your pajamas all day long, or being in front of the TV all day long, or eating a bunch of junk food because you have nothing else that's productive to do. I want you to be thinking about how can you be diligent? How can you have this characteristics and resolve with everything? That's staying late, that's working hard, that's the first one to arrive, last one to leave. How can you be profitable? How can you think and have this focus about being diligent about it? Those are the Christian qualities that you want in someone that's working for you. Why don't you be that person as well within that community? I think of this, even the example of Paul the Apostle. He wanted to make sure that he was never taking from the church that he had started, but giving to the church. And so he had his own Etsy account. You know that? He had his own e-commerce business, if you would. What he had is he tended nets. He built nets. He did something with his hands. He worked hard. That means he didn't know how to market it. He knew how to sell it. And at one time he talked about Priscilla and Aquila. I think those were other people that worked with him, either worked with him or worked for him. That means he had employees. He had to sell it. He had to market it. He had to do the fulfillment. Like, he figured out how to have a business so that he can really provide to have food and shelter for him while he was creating, studying the scriptures, preparing his messages, sharing the gospel, starting churches. Guys, that's a great example of like, how can we create the market to then share the gospel? Have those qualities in your life that I think will be really helpful for you. So look at work not as a droll like a bad thing, but as a good thing, not as a hindrance each day when you wake up on Monday morning is like, gosh, I got to go to work. Now I get to work. Now I have a perspective of giving and sharing and loving that. So down in the comments below, I want to point out what are the ones that's standing out to you most? What are the things that's drawing your attention? Down in the comments, just mention down below, what's the one standing out for you? Is it, that you don't seek comfort, but seeking Jesus and getting to work and to sharing those gospel? Is it, learning your skills and passions, that it's actually God's gift to you? Or is it, work is that it's a gift, and to view it in a different light and a perspective? So just want to write those things down in there. If you like this, like and subscribe, share it to other people that you know of. I want to give you a gift before you leave, though. I've kind of curated a checklist of what I think is like, what is the most healthy, high-achieving life, which ways that you can level up, some things that I always think about. Down below, you can grab that download. I want to give that gift to you. If you're thinking about starting an online business too, and you want a workshop, I created is down below as well, for just a helpful workshop of like how to start a business, how to think about business, to have a business that's doing 6 or 7 figures, and you want a purpose-driven thing. Down below, grab that. If you liked this type of business video like this in relation to, your work and perspective, I'm going to hopefully create more of these. If you liked it, make sure to share it. But if you like this video, there's another video I did. It's right here. That's just about like your purpose, trying to figure out your skills, your experience, and what that passion is, because you really want significance and fulfillment. We all do, in everything in life. But I want to give that video to you. Check that out. Click on that video for more, and we will see you on the next video.